Dear Pink Flower, I have previously written to you in the past as you obfuscate the true handicap of left-handedness. Anyway, he goes on, but he said, my real question, I saw a U.S. aircraft carrier flying both the American and Ukrainian flag. I don't want to start a debate on it. Why would anyone, even a dumb Biden administration, would stake the nation's credibility on another sovereign nation? I would understand why a religious flag, but not a sovereign flag. No names, please. And thank you to Rough Greens. Our German Shepherd has no digestive issues. Listen, thank you. Okay, why the Ukrainian flag? Let's dig into that. We've already talked extensively on the show about the military-industrial complex and how it works, and how there's just a gigantic sum of money in war. Wars are majorly expensive, so people have figured out how to majorly profit off of them. And so the elites work with the defense contractors who work with the generals, and this is both foreign and domestic. And they have just figured out this gigantic racket where your son or daughter will go die, and they will get to line their pockets. Set that aside, though. Because that's a huge part of it. It is, but set that aside. Why are there George Floyd statues across America? Not just in Minneapolis. I think we have one in Houston, don't we, Chris? I'm pretty sure we have one in Houston. I know there's one in New York City. What, Michael? Oh, yeah, we have a mural. Yeah, that's right. We have a mural. There's one in New York City. Why are there George Floyd statues? Why? Well, here's why. The communists are really, really, really good at something. Really, very, very good at something. They're good at creating deities, oftentimes out of nowhere, out of nothing. They will create a deity. Now, what does that do? When you create a deity, you can get people to focus on that and essentially worship that. And when you get somebody to focus on something and worship something, inevitably you will get them to sacrifice something in the name of the deity. And the communist wants you to sacrifice things. He needs you to give things up. He hates you. He hates your freedoms. He hates the things you have. He hates everything about you, and he needs you to give some of those things up. He needs you to give some of them up willingly. And he has to do a bunch of different things to make you do that. And one of the things he will do is create a deity for you. I remember this in the wake of the George Floyd thing. Let me tell you how this works. This is part of the reason this is so effective and part of the reason they do this so well. And I'll tie it back to Ukraine in a second. Stay with me. I remember in the wake of George Floyd dying, because the video looked horrible, right? Here, you know what I remember? I don't remember all the Black Lives Matter Antifa protests. I mean, I remember them, but that's not what sticks out to me. You want to know what really stuck out to me big time? Friends of mine on the right, pundits, politicians, not just the Mitt Romney types, they couldn't wait to run to the microphone and talk about, oh, we are kind of racist. Yeah, the cops are pretty racist. Hey, like I was talking to my black friends, and the cops they couldn't wait to kind of go out and pay homage to the new deity. Trump himself, remember Trump was president in the wake of George Floyd's death, and all those riots were burning down cities. You may not remember it, but I do. It took a month for Trump to mention Black Lives Matter. Every press conference he gave, it was Antifa. Oh, we got to stop Antifa. Well, Black Lives Matter was marching right alongside Antifa, burning everything down. What were they doing? Why? Why that hesitation? Well, because there's a God there. There's God Floyd. And you need to make sacrifices, including sacrificing truth, sacrificing things you know to be true for the new religion. So they hold these symbols up. They will constantly create new ones out of nowhere to get people to sacrifice freedoms, sacrifice truth, shut up about things. It's what they do. The communists does it very, very well. Bringing us back to Ukraine. Russia it's an awful situation. It's a freaking meat grinder with young men on both sides dying, families in Ukraine losing their home. It's an awful, awful thing. It's a horrible thing. And there's all kinds of history there, obviously, between Russia and Ukraine. And They owned and they owned and then they owned, and then it's just a long, long history there. Setting that aside, they got half the United States of America to go out there and sing the praises of a nation most Americans could not find on a map. What percentage of Americans, if you handed them a blank map of Europe, could put their finger right down on Ukraine? I would argue that number is under 10%, and it's probably under 5%. In fact, look, I'm not pointing fingers. I don't think I could. I mean, maybe I could now after this whole thing, but I probably couldn't beforehand. And yet you have half the nation singing its praise, and then the other half, the GOP half, not only singing its praise, they're half singing its praise, but they're too afraid to ever raise any significant criticism of it. So what you've done, you've created this new deity. And because you've created this new deity that the right is afraid to criticize and the left worships, you're getting people to sacrifice things. We are being smashed with inflation and interest rates. We're staring a debt ceiling crisis in the face. Americans are draining their savings, racking up credit card debt. We have a financial tidal wave about to wash over this country. And yet the Senate just recently passed a brand new expensive package for Ukraine that passed 99-1. Why? Well, God asked. And if God asked, who can say no? The communist is really good at creating new deities whenever they can find them. They'll find them. They'll see an opportunity. They will take advantage of the weak, stupid, pathetic nature of the right, and they will create a deity, and they will get sacrifices. Because that's really all religions, isn't it? Including the one, whatever one you believe in. Don't they all demand some form of sacrifice? Chris, you go to synagogue on Saturday? Would you rather do other things on a Saturday? Of course you'd rather. Now, I know you enjoy synagogue, but there are other things you could be doing. It's a sacrifice. You go in. I tithe at church. I have to give, I believe I am required to give 10% of what I make back to Christ. It's always money. So I take 10% of what I make and I tithe. That's a sacrifice, is it not? 10% of your income, giving it back. Why do I do that? Because my God tells me to do that. So I do that. That's what they do. You always have to look at these people in a religious way. And that's why it can be, I shouldn't say it is, it can be very difficult for non-religious people to understand how the communist thinks because the communist is religious. Now, that's not universal. My buddy James Lindsay is one of the best anti-communists I know and understands how these people think a lot. And he's a card-carrying atheist, one of these dyed-in-the-wool atheists. So you can, but it is difficult if you don't have a belief system. It is difficult to understand he does. The communist does. It is not an ideology. It is a religion. He is a religious zealot. Until you understand him that way, you'll never understand him at all. I have great news. If you enjoyed that, I have a YouTube channel you can subscribe to. Whatever I do, it'll be right there on YouTube. So go subscribe today.